Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alon Eisenstein, and welcome to the Germinator. And I have my guest with me today, Keith MacIntyre. I'll just quickly want to just share our preview page for everyone here. Keith is the CEO and founder of skiKrumb Trackers, and today we're going to talk about leading with the story, not the tech. I look forward to chatting with Keith about his experience. And again, for me, teaching at the School of Engineering and working a lot with tech-minded people, I think this is a very game-changing type of statement that I hope more people will listen to. Before we go to our conversation, I always love to start with acknowledging the land on which we are hosting this Germinator series. And we are meeting on the Syilx Okanagan territory in the city of Kelowna in the province of British Columbia. And I always like to acknowledge the land in a way that's meaningful for the guest. And so thinking about skiKrumb, and we'll ask Keith in a second about skiKrumb and what it does, just so get everybody know what it is. The gist is knowing where people are at, especially in the mountain when they go out skiing. And so the way that this is relevant to the Syilx Okanagan people is partly in the name Okanagan, which is a mispronunciation of the Insyilxian word Sukanaken. And that word was what the settlers who asked the local inhabitants first coming to the valley ask, um, who are you? And the interpretation of who are you was asking, what are you or what job are you doing? And the Sukanaken was a concept that relates to this idea that during the harvesting season, people would scatter all over the valley up in the mountains, and somebody had to stay put at the bottom of the valley and know where everybody's at in case there's an emergency and somebody needs to be called for a relative or whatnot. The Sukanaken would go to the top of the mountain to find whoever is there. So knowing where people are at is part of this idea, the concept of Sukanaken. And I thought that would be very fitting for today's discussion with Keith. Um, for those of you who are joining Germinator for the very first time, I'll just kind of give a little tidbit preview of what the Germinator is all about. And it is about carving out spaces to talk about people's transformational careers and growth and how they come up with ideas that are, for the most part, hidden from the world until they burst out, much like germinating seeds in the ground when they're invisible, but they're still working hard on growing an idea. And someday, when the conditions are right, we can see them and relish at how marvelous the plant is now above the ground. So with that, with that, I will bring it back to Keith. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation and for joining me for this conversation.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Would you like to give us your 30-second escalator pitch on what is skiKrumb and why should we pay attention to it?
Yeah, so in 5 years, GPS radio trackers are going to be as common on ski hills as helmets and goggles. And a little over 10 years ago, my son was lost on during a ski lesson, and the experience was terrifying. You know, I was scanning the trees, wondering if he was lost or hurt or worse. Turns out he was just took a wrong turn and he was happily skiing at the bunny hill. But it got me thinking, and I ran a tech company for over 20 years, and I knew there had to be a better way, and the better way is skiKrumb.
Amazing. I can see you're practiced,
Yes,
well versed.
I've said it a few times,
Yeah.
a few
So
thousand.
so maybe kind of just to kind of backtracking a bit, and we chatted a bit before people joined into this conversation. And I always kind of look at the history of my guests, and I think your LinkedIn page says you have a bachelor of science in electrical engineering,
Hmm.
and you made a passing comment about how long it's been, and how much how many different things you've done since. So maybe it's not even relevant to even start there. Um, so,
Yeah,
so maybe again, going back to your point on why did you go to an electrical engineering and why did you move away from electrical engineering that drew you far away?
yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I was, your typical nerd in high school and really good at math and physics and all the subjects. And I actually didn't even know what an engineer was. And one of my friends was going into engineering. He said, "Oh, you're really good at math and physics. You should take engineering." And I'm like, "Oh, like the train? I don't really get that." I I took the degree and actually wanted to be a computer engineer, programming since I was 8 years old. And but I didn't have the marks to get into it at the time at University of Alberta, so electrical was the next best choice. But actually, when I graduated, I started into software right away with General Dynamics Canada. Early in my career, I ended up being a QA and test for touchscreen voting systems that were used in US elections. And I bullied my way into being a programmer on that project and ended up rewriting most of that software and some really fabulous experience young in my career. And those of you that are programmers, the QA and test part actually made me a better programmer down the road.
Yeah. So it's the 80/20 rule. It's the 20% writing code and 80% debugging it after.
Yeah, it works on my machine, right?
Yeah. And so again, going kind of fast forward, you've done software work and you've been in the software in business as an entrepreneur for a handful of years. Um, what made you want to start your own thing? I mean, working for somebody and fixing their codes is one part of joy. But then starting your own thing, what was the reason you decided to do that?
I've always wanted to create my own products. And actually, when my first son was born, I quit my job and started my software company, Big Bear Software, with the idea that I would create products. But with a young family, I got into consulting and ended up with a really interesting project that I worked on for 14 years, developing military tactical simulators, which turned into emergency and disaster management simulators. And yeah, I got in the custom software business for about 20 years, and we built everything from finance and defense, medical, lots and lots of different things. But I always wanted to do products, so I had 20 ideas at a time. And I remember 7 or 8 years ago, I was going to launch 3 products at once and run my software company. And Chris Hively told me, "No, you got to focus on one thing. You can't do all those things." Like, just watch me. He was right. Um, but yeah, the timing just really worked out for skiKrumb. So Big White needed some custom software for ski school registration, but they were also very interested in our trackers. So in 2019, I was beginning the process of trying to raise money and trying to see if there was a market fit for skiKrumb, and it turned out there was. And I actually think we probably would have had a trial going at Big White in 2020 and launched a couple of years early. Obviously, they were distracted with keeping their hills open, and we didn't talk for a
Yeah.
couple of years. In hindsight, I should have been raising money in 2021 when there was lots more money available than there was a few years later. But hindsight.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the timing worked out well. We built the software, and I spent a good 20 or 30 days at Big White that year, just demoing the trackers and learning about the business. And the next season, they chose us, a 3-year contract. So skiKrumb is on every child and group lessons and every instructor, so they know exactly where everybody is at any given time during lessons, which is absolutely fabulous. And it quickly became apparent that it was going to be difficult to run 2 businesses at the same time. And consulting was fun, but it was not my passion
Mm.
anymore. And skiKrumb it's an entirely different journey, creating a product as it is consulting. It's really difficult at times where you have something and the revenue is going to be there in the future, but consulting, your revenue drives your business and it drives the growth of your business, and it's very predictable in your margins. Where there's a lot of unpredictability with the product, and so it's different, and it's at that time it's absolutely terrifying. And raising money is a much different thing than trying to attract contracts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm assuming if you're doing software contract consulting, then it's again it's mostly software, and now you have a physical, tangible
Yeah,
thing in your hand, which is hardware, and that's a whole beast in itself.
that's a very different thing. And just back to the subject that I wanted to uh, latch onto for this talk. I'm an introvert. I'm a nerd. When I was young, I couldn't walk into a crowded room of people. Now I can get up on stage and talk in front of hundreds of people, and it doesn't bother me. Um, but it is, as a technical founder and as an, former, I'm not an engineer anymore. I think BC gets mad if I call myself an engineer. They'll make me pay dues. Um, but as that type of technical person, we get very excited about our technology. We get excited about our idea, and we get what makes us good engineers and good software developers is we can hyper focus on what we're doing, and but we forget that other people don't think the way we do. In fact, the technical people in the room, I bet every one of you knows how an AirTag works. You'd be surprised that 95% of people that I've talked to, and I've talked to hundreds of people, don't know you need to be within 30 feet of an iPhone for an AirTag to work. And they'll argue with me. But I have an engineer brain. I think about how things work all the time. I can't stop it. It's actually annoying.
Yeah.
But that's not how other people think. So if you start, like skiKrumb's a good example. If I don't talk about AirTags before I talk about skiKrumb, a lot of times they're like, oh, I'll just get an AirTag, and then they're gone. So it's knowing your audience is very important.
Yeah, that's so true. I'll just anecdotally say I actually do know I have to be within 10 meters from the AirTag to catch it because I put it on my cat,
Oh
two
yeah,
cats, and they like to run further than 10 meters from the house, and then we have to walk with the phone and kind of get close enough for it to actually beep. Um, but going back to your point on telling the story, right? Starting with the story and not with the tech. Um, I guess my question to you is, I mean, you've learned this, I guess, the hard way, by practicing it. Um, what has been your aha moment? And I know again, and I teach entrepreneurship, and I teach engineering design, and I tell my students essentially what you say again, but believing and seeing it and practicing it is very different than hearing it somebody explain it to you rationally. And so I wonder, was there any, and you've been again, and you've been pitching this at different events, and you've been in competition, and as you said, you had investor meetings and whatnot. Um, was there a aha moment for you and that you genuinely felt like, oh, I now I get it.
yeah. I don't know if there was one single moment. I think it was a lot of learning over many, many years, and being part of the Okanagan tech community has been huge too. Like I just attended lots of events, and marketing my company was an important part of that. But you just picked up a lot of different things, and then just constantly evaluate your feedback and how people are listening to what you're saying. So, and like I said, knowing your audience too. So if I know somebody is technical, I usually say we use radio instead of cell. That's very simple. Some people know what a radio wave is, and they know what a cell signal is. Um, Initially I was so excited about LoRaWAN, I would start talking about LoRaWAN, and then people would say, well, what's LoRaWAN? And then I have to explain what LoRaWAN is. And then by that time I've lost their attention and they don't even care about what skiKrumb is. So, you only have 10 or 15 seconds to get somebody's attention. Um, so with skiKrumb, I've learned, if I'm talking to a parent, actually, first thing I do is say, does your kid want a sticker? And that gets everybody in a good mood. And then and then they almost always ask, because I'll have one of these around my neck, and they're like, "Oh, what is that?" Oh, it's like, "Oh, it's my invention." And that gets people excited. Like, "Oh, wow, I'm meeting an inventor," right? Um, and actually, it happened at Big White once when I was up by the fire pit, and a little kid saw the skiKrumb, saying, "Mom, mom, mom, that's the skiKrumb I use in my lessons." And she was just like, "Wow, I just saw the email Big White sent out. Now I'm meeting you. Like, this is amazing." I was like, "Ah, I'm just a guy." um, but you don't have much time to get their attention. So that gets them in a good mood. Then I say, oh, yeah, it's my invention. It's a GPS tracker designed for ski resorts. So you can see your kids every 10 seconds live on a 3D map. and that's something consumable. Uh, I ran a tech meetup in Penticton for a lot of years, and so people would always come to me with different ideas, and it actually happened recently, 3 or 4 months ago. Somebody I've known for a long time, and he's always got so many great ideas. And he explained his idea to me, and he's like, "Can you introduce me to Big White?" And but he got so into the weeds of excitement about his technology. I said, I'm very busy now, and I don't understand what you're saying. What is the value to Big White? Like if I'm going to use my connection to introduce you to my client, what's the value for them? And he hadn't actually thought about that. It's like, well, I got a great idea, and of course they're going to like it. It's like, okay, but why? Why are they going to like it? And he's right, they probably will. But if you don't have that storytelling, and you get focused on tech, especially to investors are often not technical. Your clients are often not technical. So you have to try to find what are their pain points, what do they want to hear, and capture their attention. It's not an easy thing to do, and you do it by practice, and you just have to talk to as many people as you can, and just notice like, okay, well, this person zoned out, and as technical people, we don't always notice when people are zoned out. So it's a
Yeah.
learned skill too, to read the room and these sorts of things. But yeah, invariably, you need to have a story, and if there's some emotion in it, it helps. So if you notice when I um, pitched skiKrumb, I said my son was lost, and I paused. That's intentional. I don't always do it anymore. That was a bit dramatic effect. Um, but when you're in a competition, for example, and again, the audience is important. You're in a competition. Let's say there's 10 companies presenting, and they're evaluating these companies. Their head is in the other presentation when you start. So you have to do whatever you can to capture that attention. And so that right there is a very emotional thing. And I let people off the hook right away. He was found, he was at Bunny Hill, everybody was happy. Probably one out of, I'd say, 50 or 60 people are so emotionally distraught that they don't hear that. And then they don't hear the rest of the pitch either. So
Yeah.
it's a bit risky, but they'll come up to me afterwards like, I'm so sorry this tragedy happened, and at least something good came out of it.
Yeah.
Um, like, no, 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 he's fine. He's actually, I hired him as an intern one summer. Like it's he's also taking electrical engineering. Um, and actually, I through my travels, I have met a parent who did actually lose his child, so I don't use that in my pitches as much anymore.
Right. I've been listening to you, kind of convey so much of the wisdom that you've learned and earned over the years. I picked up on a few threads that I'm curious to pull on, um, but I will let maybe someone from the audience, if anybody wants to ask any question. But I will kind of frame frame some of the things that I've heard you talk about. I heard you talk about where you did your learning with the power of community and being part of the tech community in the Okanagan, and really seeing what others and learning from others, not just on your own alone. And I think community is a really important element in anybody's life. Um, the second thing, you didn't say it in this way, but implied, is how do you cut through the noise and the fact that people's attention is overwhelmed, and if you can't cut through the noise, they're gonna pass on you, because why would they pay attention, right? Like you said, whether it's in the audience or the CEO of Big White.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and the last one is again the power of emotion. But I want to put a pin on all three of them,
Okay.
and just see if anybody in the audience has any question. And I think we usually get a collection of faculty from UBC, a few students, and sometimes the occasional alumni. So does anybody in the audience would like to chime in and maybe ask a question of Keith? Hi, Barb.
Man, okay.
I,
Hi,
I
I'm
saw I saw your physical hand before Mehdi's digital hand, so
yeah,
I'll let
there
you
you
go
go.
first.
I win with that. Um, I really like the idea of pitching the problem instead of the product or service. So, do you have other wisdom for people as they're formulating those pitches? Because you're right. If you can't get their attention and care about that problem, then you've lost them, right? So, do you have any deeper ideas about how you do that and frame it for the companies and entrepreneurs as they go?
Yeah, and it really depends on your product. Like in these startup competitions, everybody's like, man, you have it's like yours is so easy to explain, and it is, but I could explain it very poorly too. So it is just trying to drill down and understand what it is that the audience might be thinking. And I actually did learn that through my first Angel Summit in the Okanagan, where some of the investors weren't skiers and they just didn't understand it. And I was like, oh, I have to adjust my pitch so that
Yeah.
non-skiers understand that the market is actually huge because they're like, oh, who's going to pay $200 for this? And everybody that skis is like $200. Like that's not that big of a deal compared to everything else. So yeah, it is just trying to distill whatever your product is. Try to imagine yourself as somebody else. I mean, ask Google Gemini as this person.
Yeah.
What would you be looking for? A year ago, I wouldn't have said that, but I rely
We
on Gemini a lot
we do
now.
now
Yeah.
though, yeah.
Um, yeah, and again, I can't stress again about talking less about the tech. And I'm still learning this too. I had one of my potential investors, very experienced, sold his company for a lot of money, and he said you're at the point you actually should almost not be talking about your tech at all in your pitch decks. You should be talking about how they're going to make money because your technology is established. And let's say, for example, and again with the goal, it's not all about pitches and investors, but clients as well, as you have a very limited time and you have to think about what is your goal. And if I don't focus my current pitches on how the investor is going to make money, most of the Q&A is going to be about what is the technology, how does it work, how often does it update, and all these things. And those are fun and easy questions to answer, but they're going to go home after and like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to write a check. I don't know if I'm going to make any money. It's a cool idea. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is a good reminder, and to always know your audience and what they're looking for. And so an investor pitch would a storytelling for investors would be different from a storytelling to a potential customer.
Yeah, when I'm at a
Um,
customer, I'll actually
yeah,
tell the story about why I'm doing this. I said, look, I've got all this technical experience. I ran a business. I could do any number of things. I've chosen this not because I want to get lift passes, which is very common in the ski industry. Somebody is in the industry and they build something and often don't build it very well. And that resonates with them because they're like, oh, so you're doing this because it means something. You want to save children's lives. And that's why I'm doing this.
yeah. Mehdi, you had your hand up before as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experience. Very interesting and insightful then. I'm a last PhD student and I'm based in Toronto and I have on my own social venture. And what you said, that's kind of part of my journey. I experienced it. And something that I would like to ask is about, so two things actually. The first one is about the competition. So how do you explain it to the people about your position in the market? And the second one is that how do you manage technological development in the market that's going to have an impact on your business, either negative or kind of positive?
Um, I've been traveling a lot. Two questions. Okay, can you ask the first question again?
Yeah, how do you explain your kind of competition, or your position in the market?
Okay, yeah, that's very important, especially for investors and customers too. So like for us in the tracking industry and skiing, there's fortunately only one competitor, and they use cell. Their battery is low. What I say often is, investors are looking, okay, so you cost less. That's important. Um, technology is better, that's important. But what's the pain point? Why are ski schools choosing you over the competitor now? And it is, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Whistler, Big White, previously, they had these big giant ankle bracelet trackers on the kids' legs. And, I tell a story about how it feels like you're a prison inmate and out on day pass. And then ski hills will often lose 5 to 7% of those a year because the strap rips or falls off. So we've developed a leg band that isn't going to fall off. So that saves them tens of thousands of dollars a year. But if I talk just about the technology, radio is better than cell. Okay, well then now we're going to get into this really big conversation about why radio is better than cell. And if I can nip that in the buttons and get past that, it's easier now too. Like we're in our third season coming up, so the technology's, I can say that in one slide. The technology's proven, it's installed at 8 resorts and works flawlessly. So we can kind of get around those questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
What was it? You got a second part to your question.
So that was actually about the technological development. So sometimes technological development is going to have a negative impact on your business, or sometimes it's going to help you to scale or, to optimize your production. So how do you manage that one?
Yeah, and every business is different. So, we have a very good supply chain with our Taiwan manufacturer, but we always got to be thinking ahead too, right? Like, when I had this idea, you couldn't text a satellite with your phone, and you can now. That doesn't hurt our business. In some ways, it helps because it gets people used to the idea of having more visibility of their loved ones when they're out. Yeah, that's a complicated question. It's just never sit back on your heels and think the idea you've had is the one that you're going to have forever. And that is important too for investors and customers, as clients as well. They want to know, like, what's the plan?
So I see a question in the text from Ladan. Curious, have you ever been in a situation where you had to deliberately tone down your technical mindset, either the product design or when pitching it? And how did you shift the final product? How did that shift the final product?
The product itself hasn't really shifted from my initial idea. We've got some ideas to improve it in the future, but I'll use one example of again the storytelling and the technology. What I learned, there's a bit of a barrier to having ski hills promote this to their consumers, and I was very confused because I'm like, this is a great idea. I've had thousands of parents tell me they want to buy it. This is exciting. We're gonna make lots of money and sell thousands of these in the first year. That's not how it works, by the way. um, I mean, it can, depending how you do it. But what it drilled down to is there was a pain point with the ski hills that they were worried if they promoted it, it would make people think that skiing is a dangerous sport. It is, and we know it. That's why we do it, and we love it.
Yeah.
It pushes your limits, but we know things can happen. So I use an analogy of how years ago we just ignored that concussions happened in hockey, and only when we acknowledged that danger did change start to happen in the sport. And if you look at skiing, 15 years ago, nobody wore a helmet at all. And now everybody wears a helmet. There's two old guys on the hill that have their toques on. You wouldn't even consider putting your kid out on the hill without a helmet. When I grew up, no problem. We didn't wear helmets on bikes, anything like that. And so I said, it's not, we can downplay the safety aspect of it. There's a convenient side of thing. It's an option. But we can also help people be aware that there are things like tree wells. And it's better that your consumer base understands those exist and you've done something about it than to just pretend tree wells don't exist.
Yeah.
And then somebody doesn't know and they don't know how to deal with it when they are in one.
I think it resonates. I don't remember the specifics, but it resonates with the story of seatbelts in cars. I think the car manufacturers didn't want to install seatbelts because it would suggest that cars are dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Alberta and we didn't wear seatbelts when we were kids. We used to complain when we crossed into BC and had to put a seatbelt on. Like, imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. But even still, this was after they were already standardly installed in the car.
Yeah.
But imagine the time where the cars didn't even have it, and car makers were told, well, this is dangerous. You should have it in every single car. And they're, well, won't that scare people from coming into the car at this point? Because they will see that we admit that it's dangerous. Um,
Yeah, and then with ski hills too, then I tell the AirTag story, and then that kind of resonates with them too, is that it's actually dangerous that your guests are using AirTags.
mm,
I talked to 7 families in one day at an event that had an incident on their trip with AirTags, and they're like, "Oh, why didn't they work?" It's like, "Well, here's why." Oh, okay, makes sense. And this is, not nobody got hurt, but it was an hour of losing their kid and their
yeah.
tears, stress, and your vacation that you spent tens of thousands of dollars to come from Australia now has a negative feeling to it.
Yeah.
And again, that's the story I use sometimes with parents too, is I want to take away that possibility of having a negative experience in your child crying.
Yeah. And so maybe this leads me to a very different direction of what I initially thought of choosing. But innovation, and and when I teach innovation and I explain what innovation is, I always say it's accepting change. It's embracing change. And before you're proposing a new solution and embracing change, and I think it leads nicely to the storytelling and how important it is to tell stories. Um, you have to also recognize where people are at. And I'm hearing from you, and I would admit I would agree to that as well, is society, I think, is so used to connectivity at this point. We're all connected. Have you found that this idea of assumed ubiquitous connectivity is a barrier that you have to go through? And how storytelling let you do that better instead of the tech?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and so we have adjusted, and you can use the skiKrumb app with your phone GPS. There's inherent challenges that we can help educate our customers as it becomes more used, but your cell phone can die in the cold and your battery drains using your GPS, and you don't have full coverage on the hill. But we don't want to exclude people from using that. But so we focus on the very easiest thing to explain, which is kids don't have cell phones.
Right.
Your kid, once they're skiing since they're 3, by the time they're 7, they're going in the trees and you can't follow them because they're smaller than you. And so focus on that niche, and then especially at the beginning, people would ask, "Oh, can adults use them too?" Yes. Can I put it on my husband? He's a crazy skier, and I'm worried that he's dying. Like, yes, absolutely. Like, people will naturally get there, but if you try to explain every single scenario, so for us, the kids one's emotional. It's easy to explain, and people will extrapolate from that.
Yeah. And I like how you're very focused in not just the market segment, but the early adopter segment, part of the smaller segment, which is, well, we can't assume connectivity is ubiquitous when the kid doesn't have a cell phone. So that makes it even, lower barrier for entry. So I really like that.
Yeah, and
Um,
if I say that 30% of a ski hill, even though it is covered, isn't covered, I know that, but like then it just causes too many questions.
yeah. And then you're leading with statistics and not the story, which defeats the
Yeah,
purpose.
yeah, and you end up in just a whole different direction.
Yeah. Um, so going back to one of my initial thoughts of asking you, and I think you kind of already touched on the emotional importance of being emotionally connected to the story. Um, but thinking in a broader sense, you talked about the community and how much you learned being part of the Okanagan tech community.
Mhm.
Um, how has that community shaped you as a tech founder and not just finding I guess not just observing how important the story is, but finding your own voice as a storyteller.
Yeah, it's critical. Like I don't think I would have like I've always wanted to launch a product in my whole life, and I probably would have just done it. And I'm making mistakes and learning along the way, but having the resources that we have here, like actually my first customer is Mike McCauley. He's the managing partner at Lawson Lundell. I met him when he first moved here and helped connect him in the community, and we've stayed in touch all this time. And now they're my law firm, and he's, we've done lots and lots of really great work with them. But he's my first customer, and he lost his son in the trees the year before we launched, and so it was a very emotional experience for him. But having the knowledge of these, and the Okanagan attracts a great deal of talent. Like, you know, the Lawson Lundell team, they do VC deals and seed round deals and startups. Like they know they can take us every step of the way, which is for a city the size of Kelowna is not that common. And then just seeing people succeed, seeing the exits, and seeing like one of my some of my investors are Lance and Chris Preeb, and I met Chris when he just had the idea of two hat security, and in my head I was like, oh, you're gonna have this problem, that problem, and obviously he solved all those problems, had successful exits. But you see the possibility of that. And then with Accelerate Okanagan, they have some programs. I took the venture acceleration program, which is a lot about customer validation, and they were like, I don't know if you really need this, like you've really validated your market. But I took the course, and that's when I realized I needed to raise money, and I couldn't self-fund. But what I realized was I had validated the consumer market, but I hadn't validated the ski hills, and that actually turned out to be a more difficult um, customer to convince than the everyday consumer, and I need to work with the ski hills. Um, and then they had the fundable program, which was all about raising money and all about the different options. And there was a pitch competition in that, which I happened to win. But just having those knowledge and resources, like when I decided I needed to raise money, I had an understanding of how that worked, but I didn't know the different mechanisms. And Mike just gave me the fire hose 2 hour, like, here's all the options, and he got me to think about things in the future. Well, if you're how many times are you going to raise money? It's like, oh, I don't know. I just need money right now
Yeah.
so I can get to the next stage. So I think just having that confidence that there's people here that have done it and succeeded and failed,
Yeah.
and there's value in all of those stories. Like there's just a phenomenal amount of resources in the Okanagan. So Startup Drinks is a really great thing to go to. And just back to the original topic, when you're at a networking event, and I learned this early in my career with my software company. I used to go to a conference and I just hand out business cards, and if somebody didn't seem like they were going to be a potential client, I stopped talking to them, and then I had a stack of business cards, but I didn't make any meaningful connections. And especially when we have a really interesting idea, we want to lead with that. We want to tell them, I've got this really, really cool idea about the ski tracker. I almost always ask, what do you do? What's interesting to you? And let them come around to ask me, because they're going to listen to you more if they feel like they have a little bit of a personal connection. And I know for a lot of us, that's not natural. I can do it really well now, but I never used to be able to do it. But it is very important. People want to feel heard. And back to the conference example and networking, going to Startup Drinks, what I found is I would make 3 or 4 meaningful connections early on in a conference or an event, and then what happens is they're interested and they tell other people about you, and now you've created an advocate for you. You don't have to meet 100 people. You've got somebody spreading your story.
Have you been reading my LinkedIn posts? You're
No.
you're you're I literally this morning I shared on LinkedIn my reflection of our lecture yesterday. We had engineering capstone design lecture, and
Okay.
basically telling the students exactly what you're just saying right now. And I appreciate the synergy and the coincidence of us having this conversation after lecture. I will share this with my students because I think it's important for them to hear this from your voice as well. Um, And it also reminds me, I don't know if you're familiar with the purple cow. This is Seth Godin. He's a marketing expert
Mhm.
and wrote a book called The Purple Cow and talks about the importance of um, being um, uh, remarkable. That was the word. And he kind of breaks down the word remarkable to say somebody is making a remark about you. And so telling a story that lingers in the audience, in the listener, such that
Mhm.
they will retell your story for you after. And that makes you remarkable. And it doesn't have to be objectively faster, bigger, better, cheaper. It just needs to be lingering in their psyche that they want to tell it again. Oh, you wouldn't believe what I just heard. I met this guy Keith, and he told me about this cool thing. I don't know how it works, but here's why it's exciting.
Mhm.
And I think that's a skill that a few of us take the time to master. Um,
Yeah, and the reverse too. So help spread other people's words too, and help and connect. And like you never know what connection you made is gonna be useful now, never, or in the future. Like for example, I met somebody at Metabridge probably almost 15 years ago in Kelowna. That was an amazing event. Connected with him on LinkedIn. I saw this guy I hadn't thought about for 10 years, liked a post. I click on his profile. Oh, he lives at Sun Peaks and he's a director on the board of tourism Sun Peaks. And he helped introduce me to a whole bunch of people at Sun Peaks. So, never discount the value of a connection. And again, like I said, it's not always natural for technical people to do that. Um, we do
yeah,
get very excited about what we're doing.
yeah. I'm mindful of the time, and I do want to give our audience member the opportunity if anybody else wants to ask or make a comment before the time
Actually,
runs out.
while somebody's thinking, I would love to take a question, but I wanted to share a story too about we also have to remember to do good engineering and good software
Yes,
development.
not take it for granted.
Just recently, I don't know if you know the company Adabiotics out of Calgary. Very interesting company in the logistics space, 3D ant swarm robots pulling supplies out. Like, so the CEO is really, really good at telling stories. Raised $200 million, got clients like Nordstrom, Canadian Tire, but also started warehouses on fire and didn't adapt and didn't. And I'm just going by what I read on on the internet, but
Yeah,
now it's bankruptcy protection. So you have to have the balance of storytelling with reality.
yeah. You have to deliver. It's not enough to be a good talker. You
Yeah.
have to deliver what, yeah. And maybe the old wisdom, always under promise and over deliver. Don't do the other way around.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
never work. Um, so does anybody have any burning question or comment or anything you want to share with Keith? I'll pay attention to the chat in case anybody
Yeah,
puts in a
I
chat.
have one
Yeah.
question. Uh,
Oh,
Yeah, I think Mehdi, I heard your voice first.
I no, I was muted. I think that was
Oh,
Osama.
Yeah,
Go
oh,
ahead.
I have
Go
one
ahead.
question. Thank you, Kate, for sharing the experience. Yeah, and I have one question. Can you share like what like a day in a life of a founder look like, where you have to like wear multiple hats and day to day, controlling like your like team, product, marketing, and also like keeping pace with the AI, how it's going to impact your product development life cycle. Yeah, if you can share like a day in your life. Right.
Yeah.
a good day or a bad day?
Ideal
There's
day.
there's no such thing. They're all good days and bad days. Like there's I'll describe this stage, and actually, Mike, my lawyer, over lunch the other day said you were at one of the hardest stages of a startup, and he's right. So I describe it as relentless. Um, it never stops. As a former software developer, software engineer, very task driven and very, I like to check the boxes off, and it's literally every day there's 20 things you didn't do and 20 number one priorities that you didn't do. But I also learned through software development there's always going to be bugs, and there's only so much you can do today. So learning how to let that go. Today, I had a pitch to an angel group at 8:30 a.m. Had a marketing meeting with my team and Mount Washington, set priorities and schedules for the tech team. That was all before 10:30. And then actually I took the rest of the morning off and I had a little nap before this. But I'm going to work into the evening. The last month, I've spent 35 hours on airplanes plus airport time. I've been in Switzerland. I did a couple weeks ago. I did a pitch in Vancouver for the Technology Impact Awards. So I flew there, did the pitch, flew to Prince George the next day for the Angel Summit. Flew home the morning after that, crashed for a couple days, flew to Toronto the next Monday to pitch to an angel group there. My flight got canceled and I got there 5 minutes after the meeting started. So I flew to Toronto for a 2-hour meeting, slept and went home. Meanwhile, everything's still got to get done, payroll and keep the team motivated and driving forward. And what I learned, so I grew my software company to about 30 employees and contractors at its peak, which is, it's a lot. We grew that very, very quickly. And what you learn, or what I learned through that, because people ask, like I was president of a nonprofit, I was doing triathlons, I was involved in the community, and like, how do you have time to do all this? And as you progress and as you learn, and maybe the software helped with that, is you just learn to make decisions really quick, and you learn and understand that not every decision has to be the right one or perfect. You can always, almost always, opening a co-working space in March 2020 was a challenge that was hard to overcome, but you can always react and fix your mistakes down the road. But and sometimes just sort of let go of all the things that you have to do, and whatever bubbles up to the top, even if it seems not very important right now, just do that task and then the important things will come up. But yeah, it is absolutely relentless right now. Like I was saying before, everybody jumped on. Everybody's like, it's October now. In March, it feels like yesterday. They're like, oh, we're in April. They're like, oh, the season's over. Are you taking some time off? No, absolutely not. This is spring and summer and fall are, for me, more busy than the actual winter. And it's a business that doesn't take weekends off in the ski business. So I learned after my first year, I have to pick days to take off, and they're not the weekends generally. So Monday and Tuesday are usually quieter. But if you forget to take those days off, you can burn out really quick. So anyway, so that answers your question. Relentless.
Thank you for sharing the life lessons.
Yeah, thank you. And Mehdi, I see your hand is still up, so we'll let you
Yeah.
squeeze in.
So the question is about what would you wish to know when you were 20, 25 years old?
I would have, yeah. I had ideas when I was that age, but I didn't have the resources. So it's just learning. So and there's more resources out there, but attend startup competitions, meet founders, just be involved in the community. Actually, funny story, when Accelerate Okanagan was just really getting going, they had a pitch competition. This was almost 15 years ago now, and they couldn't get enough people, and they wanted somebody from Penticton. So I just made something up. I didn't win. Actually wasn't a bad idea, but even that one experience is something that I could build off of. If you are going to run a business that needs capital, learn about raising money as soon as you can. And it doesn't have to be reading a bunch of books. It's even just talking to one founder that raised money and say, like, how did you do it? And the thing I would have told myself 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago, start the process sooner. Because it takes longer than you think. Like, it's all coming through this October, but just how my business works, I didn't really start the process for this round until February, March. Summer comes, nobody wants to talk to you. They're all on vacation. And then September, things get really busy. So, in hindsight, if I'd started 6 months sooner, but it's hard with technical people. We tend to be a little bit of linear thinkers sometimes. I can dabble in both, but I'm like, I need to focus on the season and make sure that's there. And then now I've learned like a big part of my job is raising money. Like if we're going to expand into Switzerland, which has a public network of the equipment we use, that's going to take capital, and I need to start that conversation now, which I have. So it's actually very strange. It's a strange and uncomfortable experience because to me, raising money is completely the opposite of sales. It's a similar process, but you're like it's such a different approach and experience, and you're trying to convince people that you're great and your product's great and you're going to make lots of money and people are trusting you with their money. I actually always feel uncomfortable when I get the check. And then I don't, because then I'm like, okay, all right, we can implement the plans that we need to do. But it's like, okay, well, somebody's trusted me with, sometimes 100,000. Next year it'll probably be 1 million. So they've trusted me with that money, and I feel driven to do something about it.
Yeah. And in a way, maybe again, for most people, the idea of sale is the end, because you switch something for money, but then an investment is the beginning, because then you're locked in with that partner.
Yeah.
And we quickly chatted about, when you're seeking investors, you have to know who the investors are that you want to form that long-term relationship with, not just anybody. Um,
Yeah, and if you are going to run a company that needs to raise money, the sooner you do it, build relationships even before you've started the company. Actually, one of the people involved with the Angel Summit, like he meets somebody, he's got people that are Series B, C people. He still keeps them updated on his business, even though they'll never probably get to that stage. You never know, and if you do get to that stage, it's nice that they know who you are and you're not starting from scratch
yeah,
instead of just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks.
yeah, absolutely. I'm mindful of the time. It is 5 minutes before the hour, so I do want to maybe just use the opportunity to not rush my thank you. So, Keith, first of all, thank you so much. You are hearing how relentless your life is at this moment in time makes me even more appreciative that you chosen to spend 1 hour of your relentless day with us and share your wisdom. Um, I really appreciate your story and the way you tell your story and the way you articulate why telling your story is so important. And I agree with you. Every single word is words to wise, and I will echo that loud and clear to my students, my current and my future students, and hope that some of them will seek your wisdom, either virtually or even reach out to you at some point and ask you to tell it again in person, and leverage the community that you're already part of, that I see how much is supporting you.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here, and it might not seem like the most important thing in my day to be here, but it actually was very. You never know, like any presentation, any talk, it focuses my attention into a different area, and I've done this kind of thing throughout my career, and it's very valuable to me. Somebody 5 years down the road says, "I heard you do this talk, and it changed my business. It changed my life in this one little way," and that's extremely valuable to me.
Yeah.
Here, I'll leave you with one more story that I tell about one of my customers. So, um, a young family, they ski 50 or 60 times a year. They have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and the mother is skiing alone with them. And the 5-year-old this year just went super fast. So she looks over her shoulder. Her daughter's there, and then she's not. With the skiKrumb app, they were reunited within 4 minutes. On Instagram, she posted it felt like half an hour. And so that's a very easy customer story that I can tell. Somebody can relate to it. Even if you don't have kids, you can imagine that story. So I use that with customers and investor pitches and with ski resorts. So
That's so impactful, and I don't ski, but I can imagine myself freaking out if one of my kids was gone in that
oh,
situation.
it's
Yeah,
terrifying. It happens like that, and the consequences can be severe.
yeah. Before I let everybody go, I do want to just give a flag or a shout out to my next guest, which is Scott Steerett, and he's the founder of Venture for Canada. And I think a lot of people in the entrepreneurship world in Canada may have heard of Venture for Canada. And so he recently stepped down from his role as leading Venture for Canada, and he recently published a book called The Uncertainty Advantage. And so I'm going to have a conversation with him about the 6 pillars for thriving in a changing world. And I would invite everybody to join us for that conversation as well in 2 weeks, October 21st, same time, 2 p.m. Pacific time. I should probably pay attention to the daytime because we're going to switch over in November. So I think this would be the last one in the daytime, and then we're going to switch over. Thank you very much for everybody who joined this conversation, and wishing you all safe skiing. And if you ever see a skiKrumb in your ski resort, don't be shy and post it on LinkedIn and Instagram, and give a shout out to Keith.
All
Uh,
right. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot. See you around.